all of you had a chance to take a look at the Tesla Roadster sitting out there in the parking lot. It was the one behind the orange cones that looked very different from all the rest of the cars out there. If you didn't get a chance, try to beat Elon out of here tonight and go take a look at it, or at least watch him tear out of the parking lot silently. So, allow me to do an introduction, sir. We've known each other a long time.
We have. You know, Churchill Club is 12 letters.
Oh, yes, it is. Oh, my goodness. I was just thinking, it was 20, it's hard to believe it was 28 years ago that Rich Karlgaard and Tony Perkins showed me a plan for this. And it was about this, just a few years before I was shown the plan for eBay. And in both cases, I said, I just don't think it's going to work.
It's crazy.
No, it's just crazy. So allow me to introduce you. 37-year-old Elon Musk was born and raised in South Africa, but left home at age 17 to make his way in the world. Living on as little as $1 per day, he eventually made his way to the Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania, where he earned bachelor's degrees in economics and physics. Musk then attended Stanford's graduate program in high-energy physics, where he lasted exactly 2 days before dropping out to form a company with his brother. That company, Zip2, was sold for $300 million. Musk then founded X.com, an online financial services company. It eventually became PayPal, of which Elon was the largest shareholder. PayPal, as we all know, was purchased by eBay for $1.5 billion in 2002. When he graduated from Wharton, Elon determined the three important areas where he wanted to make a contribution was the internet, clean energy, and space. And with PayPal, Tesla Motors, SpaceX, and Solar City, he has done just that. And in the process, made himself one of the most celebrated entrepreneurs on the planet. Ladies and gentlemen, Elon Musk.
Thanks.
So let's begin with the topic of greatest interest to the audience here tonight, I assume. Tesla Motors.
Okay.
Where's the company at right now? Where do orders stand?
Oh my God, I don't know what to tell you. It's been rough. No, I'm just kidding. It's actually it's actually been pretty good. In fact, it really quite a contrast to the rest of the auto business. We're sold out, first of all, for the Tesla Roadster, the sports car. We're sold out through the end of October, and within I think probably within 2 or 3 months we'll be actually sold out of all 2009 production for the Roadster. So
is this for the standard Roadster or the advanced version?
Well, we do have a Roadster Sport coming out, which is for those for whom the Roadster isn't fast enough.
Right.
There's the Roadster Sport.
Yeah. How fast is that one now?
That'll do 0 to 60 in 3.7 seconds.
So it's, like
it's faster than almost any.
It's like
car,
a nice
really.
CBM laid over on its side.
Yeah, it's it's ridiculously fast.
Now, how are the orders for that?
Good, actually. I haven't looked at the latest orders for the Roadster Sport, and people actually have an opportunity to upgrade their car to the Roadster Sport that are getting their car after, I think, late June or July. And what we're finding is a lot of people are choosing to upgrade their car to the Sport package. So I actually don't have an exact number for you, but anecdotally, it seems to be doing very well.
Now, the Roadster is 109,000. Is that right?
Yeah.
And the Roadster Sport's 139,000. Do I have that right?
Well, the price to customers is actually, in terms of a comparison price that's relevant for comparing it to a Porsche or something like that, is actually about $98,000. And the reason for that is, if you buy an electric car, you get a $7,500 petrol tax rebate. Even if you're an AMT, it applies to everyone.
Okay.
And then you don't pay the gas guzzler tax, which is somewhere in the order of $3,000. So effectively, you're
$12,000 discount.
Yeah, you're roughly, and it depends on which car you compare it against, because the gas guzzler tax does vary, but it's somewhere between a $9,000 to $12,000 discount, and relative to a gasoline sports car. So in effect, you're talking about a car that's just under $100,000 as a base price, and then the sport package is another $20,000 on top of that, and that's equivalent to like going from like a 911 to a 911 Turbo or something, that kind of thing.
Now, if I were to order one right now, if anybody in the audience wants to order one right now, raise your hands. I will take orders. I mean, there you go. If somebody out here were to order one right now, what would it take? What's the deposit and what's the delivery date?
So we're actually reducing our deposit requirements on the Roadster. Previously, we'd used the deposits to provide funding for the company, and that was an acknowledged thing. We said, look, car companies are very capital intensive, so in order to make this doable or more doable, we're going take deposits, they'll be at risk. People should recognize that, and then the advantage is that they get one of the first cars. And we actually got a lot of people who signed up to that. But we don't really need that anymore. So we're actually going to reduce the deposit down to I think $9,900, and then you pay the balance just at start of production, which is a couple months prior to delivery.
Now, did you find any impact on the orders because with the falling gas prices? I mean, we saw what happened with Prius. I mean, you can go to Sunnyvale and entire supermarket parking lots are filled with unsold Priuses. Did that affect you guys at all?
I don't think that was a huge impact because most people aren't buying the $100,000 sports car because of, to save money on gas.
It's more geek love than it is cheap gas.
Yeah, I was more worried about how that would affect sales for our sedan, which we just unveiled a few weeks ago.
Yeah, we'll talk about that in a moment. But keep going,
But I don't think that's been a key impact on Roadster sales. I think certainly the economy as a whole and the implosion of people's net worths has had an effect on new Roadster sales. And we're fortunate that we do have a significant backlog, going out 6 months. But I wouldn't say gas prices have had a big effect on the Roadster.
Now, being in the car business, you have to be asked, are you taking any federal money? And are you worried about your job security if you are?
Well, I don't have to worry about my compensation. My compensation currently is $1, so I'd be happy to cut that in half for the federal government if they do give us a loan. But actually, we've taken no government money at all thus far. And some people out there think we have, and we haven't. Now, we do aspire to get a government loan under what's called the ATVM program. It's the Advanced Technology Vehicle Manufacturing Program.
That's from the DOE? That's
from the DOE. It's not bailout money, and this program was done before there was a need for bailout money. This legislation was written started writing it about 18 months ago, and it finally got approved by Congress last year sometime, I think late last year. So, and this is before Obama. So this isn't stimulus money. This isn't bailout money. This is actually something that originated in the Senate Energy Committee because they felt it was a matter of national security and obviously environmentally important for the United States to accelerate its transition away from oil for all the obvious reasons that it's damaging. It's obviously very damaging to the environment and. As gas prices rise, because as they will dramatically when we come back to another boom, there's going to be a massive wealth transfer out of the United States to other countries, and it's just kind of silly, for that. Why it's cheaper for us to just accelerate the move of oil.
Now, I'm not going to ask you how much you plan to get from the government or when, because I think you said that publicly once and got in trouble, didn't you?
I did get in trouble. I just said what they told me, and they didn't say keep it quiet. So, but suffice to say, we are highly optimistic that we will receive loan approval in the near term.
Okay, we'll leave it there. Let's talk about the factory. There was an awful lot of news a few months ago, groundbreaking ceremonies.
Yeah.
Big assembly plant going to be out there on 237 in San Jose.
Yeah.
Now it seems to be on hold. And something about financing delayed, or you didn't qualify for it, or what happened?
Yeah, so the San Jose, the idea of using the undeveloped land of the 237 in San Jose occurred before the Section 136 or the ATVM loan program was approved by Congress. And one of the clauses in that ATVM loan program is that you have to. It gives preference to manufacturing facilities older than 20 years, which was actually it's sort of a quasi-Buy American clause because the foreign car companies that have factories here, almost all their factories are younger than 20 years. So it's essentially to bias the cash towards American companies that clause is put in. But nonetheless, it's there, which means we can't do greenfield. So
Well, I assume there's going to be a lot of empty buildings in Dearborn soon. Is that where you plan on going?
No, we'll most likely be in Southern California. We actually have term sheets on 2 locations in Southern California. We looked first in the Bay Area. I'd love to take over NUMMI. That would be awesome.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's, maybe at some point we'll have an opportunity to acquire NUMMI. That'd be great. I'll take that in a second. But that isn't available right now, and I don't think we can't afford it really, unless they give it to us. Which maybe they will. I don't know.
Now, so where are the cars being manufactured right now? UK? At Lotus?
Actually, the Roadster is it's considered a U.S. manufactured car. The final assembly occurs in the Bay Area in Menlo Park, of all places.
That well-known auto center.
Right. Well, bear in mind, we're talking low production for the Roadster. So This is a production rate of around about 25 a week. That might rise to 30 a week in the summer. So it's not. I mean, when you sort of add that up, that's 5 cars a day. I mean, that's like your average service center could do a lot more than that. So we install the powertrain in Menlo Park. We do final vehicle verification. We do the high-speed tests out at Moffett Airfield, and then we manufacture the battery pack in San Carlos. So it's by value talking about something mostly done here.
Where do you do the tests at Moffett?
On the airfield.
On the runway?
Yeah.
Have any of you ever seen a Tesla racing down the runway at Moffett Field? Do you guys like to do it 3 o'clock in the morning or something?
No, there's hardly any traffic on Moffett.
Nowadays, true. Yeah. Let's talk about the new car.
Sure.
The S. Tell me about it.
All right. This really is a great car. I mean, the Roadster is a good car. I think the S is a great car, and I think it's something that will. It's really quite historic, or at least it aspires to be, in that this will be the first mass-produced highway-capable electric car, and there's never been. This may sound strange, but there's actually never been a mass-produced electric car outside of golf carts,
Is it the first non-internal combustion mass-produced car since the Stanley Steamer?
Yeah, it might be.
Wow. Okay.
I mean, there's been hand-built things and conversions of gasoline cars and stuff like that, but not an actual mass-produced electric car. Of course, we have to mass-produce it for that to be true. So that's why I say it aspires to be. That's aspiration is that. But if we fulfill that aspiration, then it'll be very historic. This is a car really designed to take full advantage of an electric powertrain. So the packaging is very optimized for that. The battery pack is in the floor pan between the 2 axles, so it's this big sort of flat battery pack. It looks a lot like a giant laptop battery pack. And in fact, uses laptop cells.
I was going to say, is it still just a ton of laptop batteries?
Well, it's half a ton of laptop.
Half a ton of laptop batteries strapped together.
Yeah. Now that's tricky, by the way.
So in advance,
strapping is tricky.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah.
So you need a lot of processors, right, to manage all that.
Yeah. I think we're like 30 or 32 processors or something on board. A lot of them are like little tiny ones.
So you must go to bed every night praying for breakthroughs in battery technology, so you don't have to deal with this.
No, it's not too bad actually having lots of little cells. I mean, we keep. Believe it or not, that is the highest energy density pack that you can make, is to use a large number of laptop cells. And we keep pushing on the cell manufacturers. And technically, by the way, a battery is a collection of cells. And the cell, if it's just one, it's a cell. And if it's 2, it's a battery. So the cell and the cell is a chemical engineering problem. The battery is actually a mechanical engineering, electrical engineering, and software engineering problem. So there are different types of expertise needed to do that. And in fact, there are many makers of cells, but there is only one maker of large lithium-ion battery packs, and that's Tesla. Of course, there will be others in the future, and that's why Daimler came to us to make the battery pack for the new electric Smart.
Right. Now, something I've never asked you. My laptop just about sets my pants on fire. How do you keep all of those from just cooking that car.
Are you sitting on your laptop?
I don't even want to think about.
That may be part of the
I don't
problem.
even want to think about sitting on a half a ton of laptop batteries.
Well, look, what's the worst that could happen? I mean, we do extensive safety testing. I shouldn't laugh. This is a serious subject. So I'll break it down. Okay. So we start off at the cell level. We use only the finest cells.
Corinthian
finest
cells.
Finest cells. Each one gently observed and carefully prepared. We do actually use the highest quality cells, which come from Japan. They're carefully verified by the manufacturer. Then when we receive them, we check each cell. In addition to the fuse that's built into the cell from the manufacturer, we double fuse the cell, so it's triple fused in total at the cell level. Then the cells are incorporated into modules. The modules are designed to ensure that there's passive propagation resistance between the cells. So what that means is, even if all active safety systems fail and a cell goes into what's called thermal runaway, that energy is contained and it does not spread to any neighboring cells. So this involves insulating the cells, making sure you've got a thermal conduction path to get rid of the heat, so you don't essentially have a chain reaction. So that's quite tricky. But we also never want to get to that. To even losing a single cell.
Right.
So we have an active cooling system, so the battery pack is liquid cooled. And that also is a tricky problem because you need to be thermally conductive but electrically isolated.
Yeah.
And moreover, that needs to be true over 100,000 plus miles of bumpy roads.
The great problem in real life cars.
Yeah, real life cars. Real life cars it is hard to make things last for 100,000 miles and 10 years and that kind of thing. So if you hit potholes and it's getting shocks from the road, it's getting vibrations, going through extremes of temperature, it gets into an accident. Under all these circumstances, you cannot have the pack catch on fire.
Right.
Very hard problem, and then also it must be you must be able to make the pack inexpensively. It's got to be pass all the regulatory requirements. You've got to preserve the pack so that you maximize the calendar and cycle life of the chemistry within the cells. Charging.
So you have to deal with the DOT and the DOE.
Yeah,
Any branch
a lot of departments.
Yeah. Tell me more. I don't want to go into too much minutiae. Tell me more about the car.
Yeah, sorry.
What's the experience like?
I should have said. Yeah, I'll give you the sales pitch on the Model S. Okay, so this is a car that has a range of up to 300 miles. It seats up to 7 people. That's 5 adults plus 2 kids. And the way we get the 2 kids is it's kind of like the old station wagons. We have 2 rear-facing kid seats in the back. That's an option that you can order.
I remember those days.
Yeah, I mean, it's not great being in the back, but I guess it could be kind of fun if you're a kid and you can sort of watch all the other cars and stuff. And most people, when you put 7 people in a car, it's almost never 7 adults, and it's only occasionally, rarely is it 7 people. So we try to make something that could substitute for your SUV. So you don't have to cart this gigantic 7-passenger SUV all over the place. It will be 5-star crash rated, and that's a very hard thing to achieve. In fact, today's 5-star will reduce to a 3-star in 2 years.
Right, they keep moving the bar.
Yeah, they keep raising the bar on to what's necessary to achieve a 5-star. So people might think, oh, I've got a 5-star a day, it'll be like a 5-star in 2 years. No, that's like a 3-star in 2 years. I mean, you basically have to be, a Sherman tank level safety to get to 5 stars. We will be at 5 stars. I'll have my own kids in the car. We're not going to make something that's less than 5 stars.
And you got to pass all the kids, too.
Yeah, we'll be fully occupied in the car. And so the challenge then is to make it super safe, but not super heavy. So it is quite a difficult mechanical engineering problem and mass optimization problem. And actually, arguably, it will be safer than an SUV because it'll have such a low center of gravity because the battery pack is in the floor pan. that you're not going to have the tip over risk.
It's going to stay on the ground.
Yeah. So I mean, if you're going on like some mountain path or something and you go off the side, I mean, it doesn't matter how many airbags you got. You know,
right.
You're toast. So you want to make sure you don't have tip over risk, and then so on tip over risk, you'd actually win against an SUV.
Tell me a little about the ergonomics. I hear you have some innovations on the dashboard.
Absolutely.
And that sort of thing.
So for the interior approach, you can think of it like a giant iPhone. Okay, that's the center console. So imagine a 17-inch diameter iPhone, and that's the basic thought there. And 3G wireless connected.
Really?
So, yeah, absolutely. In fact, so it'll have your controls, your standard controls for stereo, HVAC, but it's also going to be able to connect to the internet. So you want to do Pandora radio, if you want to do YouTube, whatever you want to do. It'll have a browser. So it's just Linux running a browser. So if you want to look at your email while you're not driving. And in fact, there's some sort of interesting ideas people thought of. Well, like maybe you could have it read out your email to you while you're driving,
right.
And do voice commands on the computer. And nice to allow people to develop applications that could run on the computer, because it's a full-fledged computer. It's not some sort of dumbed down car thing. And also you should be able to theme the display. So there's a 17-inch display in front, and there's about an 11-inch display in front of you.
So it's user-modified display.
Yeah. So there's a read-only display right in front of you, and then a big 17-inch touchscreen in the center console. And you can theme your cell phone, and customize it to your interests and needs. Well, why can't you do that with a car? You should be able to,
Right.
Seems like a reasonable thing. So if you want to see different instruments on the front, like you care about seeing this readout, that readout, you want it to sort of have a heavy metal look. You want it to look like country and western, whatever. Make it feel like it's more your car, not just something that rolled off an assembly line.
So you could have the dashboard of a '67 GTO.
Yeah,
Stewart
absolutely.
Warner gauges if you wanted to.
You can have it look like steam gauges if you want.
Yeah.
To. Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
So this is your 5 Series killer.
We're not going to kill. We're looking at 20,000 units a year, so we're not going to kill anything.
Right.
And we'll impinge on the market share of several cars out there, like Lexus, Mercedes, BMW, Audi, Infiniti. But really, it'll be a small, a hardly noticeable impact on total sales. At least there were 17 million cars sold in the U.S. a year. I think it's down about, not much, like
right.
9 million cars a year at kind of run rate. So, if we're even at my 9 million cars a year,
rounding error. Yeah.
Yeah, and at that 20,000 is 10,000 domestic, 10,000 international. So we're talking, 0.01% of the car market.
Okay, so give me some performance specs.
0.1%.
Give me some performance specs on this thing. Price.
Starting price $49,900.
49,000?
900.
Well, yeah, okay.
And
gosh, that's less than 50.
yes, that's right. It is. That's right.
Only 50 grand. That's half the price.
It is. It
What
is
you're
half
selling
the
the
price.
Roadster for.
Yes.
That's quite impressive.
Thanks. And now that is after there's a $7,500. Remember that federal tax rebate? That's after the $7,500. Although I haven't taken into account the gas guzzler tax. So in effect, for an apples to apples comparison, it would be a little bit less than that, maybe 47,000 or something like that.
And you said distance was on a charge?
It can go up to 300 miles, but now the 49,900 one will do 160 miles.
Okay.
But there will be a 300-mile range pack available, and one of the things we're thinking of doing is perhaps making that something you can rent. So if you can't afford the more expensive 300-mile range pack or don't want it, then that's fine. Get the 160-mile pack, rent the bigger one when you need it. Some other ways we've addressed the range issue is a 45-minute fast charge capability, which is about the limit of the battery chemistry. And then we're designing the battery pack such that it can be switched out fast and you can fill a gas tank. Which in principle, if you think about it, this is basically a big laptop on wheels.
Right.
And if you can switch out your laptop battery, in 30 seconds, well, why can't you do that with a big one? You just need something that can simulate a hand at a large scale.
Those 2 little clips and that 500-pound battery pack falls out.
Yes, not something you can do by hand.
Right.
But you do need special equipment at sort of a battery pack swap station. And there's companies out there that are looking to do swap stations.
Now, weren't you talking about your solar company, weren't you talking about having solar panels that people could put on like the roof of their house?
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
do home charging for a quick 75 miles or whatever it was?
Well, the most efficient thing to do is to actually put solar panels on the roof of your house and just have them basically power your house, particularly during the day, because during the day is when you encounter peak load,
right.
And they have to put the least efficient power stations online during the day. And then at night, at night it's actually better to charge your car at night. So it's better to like decouple it effectively.
Okay.
So if you want to be truly green, then you just need to say, okay, well, I'm going to generate more energy via solar than I consume in my car. Although the Model S will have a solar panel option, so you can put solar panels on the roof of the car itself.
On the car itself, okay.
Yeah, and there's some interesting ideas to potentially have solar carports, and if you want to get some really sort of crazier ideas, are to like try to coat the whole car with some sort of amorphous photovoltaic coating, and have the whole thing be
one big solar panel.
Yeah, yeah.
Now there was talk for a while, and I guess you've abandoned it, of even putting a gasoline engine in.
Yes.
Is that gone?
It is gone. We looked closely at the whole plug-in hybrid thing, and I guess about a week ago or so, there was a guy who sent me an email. He's like he runs like a Volt site or a GM Volt site or something. He's not working for GM, but he just said, so why isn't Tesla doing the range extended electric vehicle approach, the plug-in hybrid thing? And I just sort of gave him a kind of a matter of fact, this is why we chose the strategy of one another. And then, it's all over the place like, I'm trashing the Volt. I'm not trashing the Volt. I hope the Volt is successful. And I've said so many times. But I'm just explaining why did we not do that. So I'll explain here. I mean, basically, what it comes down to is, it's a technical point. Because we had to sort of drill into it quite deeply to appreciate why it wouldn't be ideal, in our opinion, to have a plug-in hybrid. If you go from, say, if you consider a 200-mile range pack versus, say, a 40-mile range pack, it sounds like you'd have a pack that is 1/5 the size, right, for the 40-mile pack. But that's actually not true. So, because what happens is for the 40-mile pack has to generate, particularly if it's a range extended electric, so you're not, the 40-mile pack has to generate 5 times the power.
Right.
Well, technically you could have the motor running, and so maybe it only has to generate 2.5 times the power. But then you're running both simultaneously, and that you're not really being electric if you're doing that. So if you just consider the pure electric case, you've got to generate 5 times the power. But the way it works in battery chemistry is that power and energy work at opposites. You can either have a high power pack or a high energy pack. Energy is total mileage. Power is the rate at which you can take the rate at which you can consume that energy. Right. So in effect, you then push to a low energy density chemistry in a plug-in hybrid case. And because you're hitting the pack so hard, it's working so much harder than the bigger pack, that you have to derate the pack. Derate the energy content. So you end up with something which is close to half the size, maybe 40 to 50% of the size of the 200-mile pack. Okay. And then you've got to add in the cost and weight of the engine, the generator, all the cross connects between the two. You've got to factor in that there's servicing of 2 complete drivetrains. You still have to deal with all the EPA stuff for emissions. And then when you've consumed your 40 miles, which we'll do reasonably free, not every day, but maybe every third day, you're then going to have something which is massive, an engine which is really underpowered.
Right.
It's going to sound
this heavy car down.
Yeah, it's going to feel like I've got a lawnmower engine trying to power my sedan. And it's going to be running at very high RPM. It's going to be working really, really hard.
It's not going to make that 100,000 miles.
It's going to be tough. Yeah. And so you really, it's going to feel very anemic on the highway, and so it's problematic. You're neither fish nor fowl. And it stands to reason that if you've got a given mass and cost, and you say to an engineer, make the best electric car for a fixed mass and cost, or you say to an engineer, make the best gasoline car, fixed mass and cost, it's going to be a better gasoline car or a better electric car than if you split the baby.
So you're not trashing hybrids, but you just did a pretty good job of trashing hybrids.
Well, I could be wrong, you know. I'm just saying that's the reasoning that caused us to focus on electrics and continue to focus on electrics.
Let me ask you a Silicon Valley question.
Yeah.
Your vice chairman, and for a long time the CEO of the firm, is a name out of the Silicon Valley past, Zev Drury, a guy that we haven't seen around here for 30 years, who ran Monolithic Memories, way back when. Kind of a legendary figure, kind of a swashbuckling guy. I seem to remember he was running Monolithic Memories, and the Yom Kippur War broke out, and he literally called into the office and said, "I'll be in Israel until the war is over," and volunteered and went off to battle. Unique guy, but he's been missing from action around here for a long, long time. Where did you find him? And why would you get a chip guy in a battery business, in a car business?
Sure. How do we find him? Actually, it was through one of the investors at Tesla. Zev is a car guy. I mean, he went into sort of racing, did a lot of racing, and he was very competitive. You know, obviously, you know, great entrepreneur, with a strong track record, and I think very importantly, he was someone who was not afraid of danger, as evidenced by his running off to the Yom Kippur War. So, you know, towards the end of 2007, we needed to find a CEO for Tesla, and we didn't have a lot of takers because it was a very difficult situation, and there weren't very many people with the guts of Zev, anyway, so you know, Zev I thought was somebody who could help get us out of a pickle, and who wasn't afraid to try to do that. And I mean, it's hard to describe. Tesla was in a really dire situation at the end of 2007. It had come to light that the car's cost was $140,000. We'd been selling it for $92,000.
You're gonna make it up in volume,
right? Yeah, and not only that, we couldn't. I mean, there were several things broken about the car technically. Transmission being the most notable item, but there were a lot of other issues. You know, so it really wasn't a car that could even if we said, okay, we'll accept the $140,000. This isn't a car that would have passed safety and reliability and endurance tests. And so it was just wow, and we were sort of out of money, or close to being out of money. So this is like 18 months ago. You know, in your situation like that, you got to be pretty bold if you want to come in and run, help run the company. So, and he was willing to do that, and he'd sort of, like I said, he'd taken things from very tough situations before, and so he joined as CEO, and in effect he and I were kind of the co-CEOs of the company, because he was coming in cold and didn't know any of the background, and although I'd been at sort of a fairly high level up to that point, and not in the nitty-gritty, at least I had the contextual background. So he and I basically ran the company together for about 18 months. And then when the financial crisis hit, I guess it was about, the financial crisis hit, and I was like, oh man, okay. So I got to up my time in the company and go from being kind of the half CEO to the full CEO, because I also had to up the ante in terms of my investment in the company financially. So it's like, all right, if I'm going to do that, then I got to, be the full CEO, not the half CEO.
Well, now bold is the ultimate entrepreneurial trait, and you obviously have it. I want to go back. Let's talk about your upbringing. But before we do that, real quick, 40. How much for the S?
49,900.
Okay.
Yeah.
How fast?
It's 0 to 60 in about 5.5 seconds, and top speed 130 miles per hour, electronically limited. We will have sport versions of the S that will have it 0 to 60 of under 5 seconds. But 5.5 seconds in a sedan is plenty fast.
Oh yeah. I'm thinking about those kids in the back seat facing backwards.
Yeah, it's not 3.9 seconds like the Roadster, but it's pretty fast.
Yeah, real fast. All right, let's talk about your upbringing. You leave home at 17, and you want to get to the States, right? Was that your dream?
Yeah.
First of all, you didn't want to be in the Army.
That didn't seem like a good use of time. Being in the being conscripted in the South African Army just didn't seem like a great way to spend time.
So without your parents' approval, you take off and you end up in Canada first?
Well, so I was trying to figure out how to get to the U.S., so try to convince my parents to move there. Oh, my parents were divorced, so at least one of them could move there, and I could move there with them. But I wasn't successful in convincing them. But then I found out my mother had been born in Canada, so I kind of walked her through the process of getting her Canadian citizenship, which allowed me to get my Canadian citizenship, which meant I could go to Canada. And my grandfather was American, actually, but because my mother hadn't gotten her American citizenship before he died and before certain age restrictions, I wasn't able to get American citizenship, unfortunately, directly. So I went to Canada initially. Canada's a great country. I was there for about 3 years, and then came down to the States to continue going to school at UPenn, Wharton.
And you live on a buck a day. How did you?
Well,
how do you live on
briefly,
but how do you do that? I mean, there's several times in your life when you're
It's a long time
basically
ago.
well below the poverty line, right? And this was one of them.
But buck a day was 20 years ago.
Yeah.
So
it was
that's like $2 a day.
$2 a day. Well, there's all the difference.
It is all that does make a big difference. Yeah. Well, I wasn't quite sure how much money, how hard it would be to get a job or anything like that. So I hadn't really had a real job because I was only 17. So I'd done like paper routes and stuff like that. So I thought, well, just in case it takes me a long time to get a job, I better make sure that my tiny stash of money lasts a long time. So I only had a few $1,000s. So I thought, well, let me see if I can live for under $1 a day, and you can do it. I mean, you just buy like hot dogs in bulk and oranges in bulk, and scurvy is bad, so you could have an orange, throw an orange in there.
That's when the blisters start forming on your tongue, it's time to get an orange.
An orange every couple of days will keep scurvy away. And hot dogs are like it's just sort of like pasta and pasta sauce. Just buy the stuff in bulk, and you can get, at least at the time, you can get to under $1 a day.
So now you pick up 2 degrees.
It got a little monotonous after a while. But
yeah, I can imagine the 14th day in a row of spaghetti.
Right.
A lot of people pick up econ degrees. A lot of people pick up physics degrees, but not many people pick up both of those. Those are 2 different worlds.
I thought it was relatively unique, and then I found out actually somebody else did it. But yeah, I mean, I'm more an engineer than anything else. Engineering and design is my interest. But I figured if I don't learn the business stuff, then somebody else is going to make me do things I don't want to do. So I better learn, the secrets of business. And so that's why I did the physics degree as well as the Wharton finance degree.
Now this is the most...
Finance stuff was easy, by the way. That was really, I'd say all of my business courses, like in the final year, all of my business courses together were not as hard as quantum mechanics.
Okay, I'll buy that. So now, this is the mythical moment in your career. You get accepted to grad school at Stanford. That alone's a pretty big deal. You're in physics.
Well, to be precise, actually my initial department was the material science department. And you use the word high energy physics, and that's actually a defined term in physics. Technically, I would have actually been in kind of the quantum mechanics more than high energy physics, because the area I was going to be researching was sort of an intersection of applied physics and material science, and basically trying to figure out, can you create a capacitor with enough energy density to replace a battery. Now Now, capacitors are very common components in circuit boards, and they are occasionally used to store limited amounts of energy. But the problem is that the energy density does not compare to what a battery can do. But if you could get a capacitor to approach the energy density of a battery, then things like charging could be done in minutes or seconds, technically. So you wouldn't have a recharge time issue, and then also cycle life and calendar life would be measured in decades.
But Elon, you were there for 2 days. You were there for 48 hours. I've been in meetings that lasted longer than 48 hours.
Right.
I've been drunk longer than 48 hours.
Me too.
2 days? How do you do 2 days? I mean, that's not even long enough to like get the books.
Well, it was a tough decision, actually. I was trying to figure out, okay, should I do grad studies or start a company doing some internet stuff? And this was in '95. It was before...
before the bubble. Just before.
Before Netscape even went public.
Yeah.
So, in fact, when I started Zip2, it was not with the expectation that I would make a large sum of money. It was like, okay, can I make enough money to live and buy food and stuff? That was really the threshold. It was a very, very low threshold. And Netscape had not gone public. Somebody wrote something about me that said, oh, I saw Netscape go public, and that's why I decided to start Zip2. I started Zip2 in the summer of '95, and before Netscape had gone public. I tried to get a job at Netscape, actually, and didn't hear back from them. So
now see, reading your biography, I would have thought you were the wild man, the black sheep of the family. But now I've come to the conclusion it has to be your brother, because you come out planning to get a PhD, and 48 hours later, your brother has convinced you to drop out of school and join his new company.
Not quite. No, actually, I convinced my brother to come from Canada.
Oh.
Yeah. But my brother's a convincing guy. Maybe it was, well, he was in Canada at the time. Right. But I always wanted to do something with my brother, and he wanted to do something with me, and so
a $300 million shared gift is a pretty good gift for you.
Yeah, but I mean, at the time, the expectations were really tiny.
Now, is this when you were sleeping on the floor in your office?
Actually, I was sleeping on a futon, which turned into a couch during the day. So that was like
where you held your meetings.
Yes. Right, exactly. That true.
So you were renting an office, but you didn't have a place to live, right?
So your apartment cost more than the office. So then my brother and I just got 2 futons, which turned into couches, and then during the day, and then we'd have we'd have a table and we'd have meetings there, and then at night there'd be, unbeknownst to the people that we'd have meetings with, that where we slept. And then we showered at the YMCA on Page Mill and El Camino. And then you could work out as well, so I was in great shape. It was actually fine.
So all you guys sitting in Pete's with your business plans, you guys think you have it tough. Any questions from the audience right now? We're going to get into space in a minute here, but I want to, as long as we're on cars, let's take car questions first. Yes, sir.
Elon, congratulations on your success. It's very impressive.
Please wait for the mic.
I don't need it.
No, we do need it because we're recording this.
Oh, yes, of course. So why would I have to say, where's the mic? It's coming. Thank you. I'm very interested in your idea about email being built into your next car. Now, the question I have for you is, say I'm sending you an email with this voice. Is that what you're going to hear while you're driving? My voice reading my email to you, and when you respond to me, I'll hear your voice responding to me. It's just an idea, so you got it from me. Just keep it in mind. You don't have to respond right now, yes or no. Thank you.
Okay.
Everybody sign an NDA on the way in?
Why did you name the car Tesla?
The company's named after Nikola Tesla, who's actually very well known in physics, because units of magnetism are actually units of Tesla, and I mean, he came up with a number of innovations. He also went crazy, but so hopefully that's no indication of the future of Tesla. But I mean, he was a great man, and didn't get. I think the popular side of things hasn't gotten quite the recognition that he deserves. So it was a choice between Tesla or maybe Faraday, after Michael Faraday. So So capacitance is measured in farads, by the way, in farads. So.
Could you give us your perspective on the future of Detroit?
Future of Detroit, wow. Well, the companies are going to be smaller than they used to be. I don't think I can actually. I'm not sure I could shed any light that people don't already know about Detroit, and that it's going to be a much smaller industry than before. I think there's a good chance it will emerge healthier from this process than it's been in recent years. I mean, GM and Chrysler in particular, and to some degree Ford, this was inevitable. It was only a question of when. And so the financial crisis kind of accelerated the inevitable, but it didn't. It would have happened anyway. There need to be substantial reforms on the management side and on the labor side, and I think really they need to get back to. They need to focus on producing great products. That's what it really comes down to. If you say who makes great cars, how many people in this room would say GM? It's kind of unusual. People say that. If you said, tell me who makes the best cars in the world, it might be a Toyota or a Daimler or a BMW or an Audi or something like that. So, I mean, that's really what great companies are built in great products. Hopefully.
But now, once you prove mass production of electric car, why wouldn't the M&A guys from General Motors and Ford come knocking on your door?
Well, I point out that there needs to be some currency for that acquisition. Right. And the stock isn't worth a lot, and
right.
And they don't have any cash.
They're not going to give you. You're not going to take equity in General Motors.
No, well, no. So I mean, I made this comment actually several months ago. I was a little more flippant when I say, well, what if General Motors calls up and what if Bob Lutz, who's no longer on the board, calls up and says he'd like to acquire Tesla? What would your response be? I say, well, you can't afford it, and that's just true. I don't think they can afford much of anything. They just don't have the cash, and the equity's not worth anything.
One more car question out there, and then we'll go to space.
How would you compare Tesla with Fisker Automotive?
Fisker is producing a plug-in hybrid. So Fisker is producing a plug-in hybrid. It's not, as we were talking about earlier, we're pursuing a different strategy for the reasons I articulated. If Fisker is staying, I think they're producing a four-door sedan, but it's a sportier sedan than ours. Our sedan is intended to really be very functional and have a lot of cargo space, carry 5 adults in comfort, plus potentially 2 kids, and still have room for luggage. And we're at sort of the roughly $50,000 price point there. I think at around $80,000 starting price after tax rebates. I think that's probably a fair characterization of the differences.
Let's talk about space. We literally don't have enough time interviewing you to cover everything you do. We could do 3 different events on 3 different activities. Well, let's do space real quick. Where does SpaceX stand right now? What's the status of things? And what's the status of the X Prize, too? Let's get into that.
Okay. Well, SpaceX is doing really well, thankfully. Otherwise, I would be in real trouble. I mean, particularly in terms of the time that it takes, the time that I have to dedicate to the companies. I'm on average, sort of roughly 50-50 between SpaceX and Tesla. Although, as there are issues that crop up that need to be addressed, that could swing it to as much as 80% SpaceX or 80% Tesla in a given week. But SpaceX is profitable. It's been cash flow positive and profitable for the last 2.5 years. We got to orbit last year. In December, just before Christmas, NASA awarded SpaceX a $1.6 billion contract to resupply the space station with cargo.
When does that begin?
That begins at the end of next year.
Okay.
So the first operational mission after the demonstration missions is December of next year.
And at what point do you take over completely? Don't you have exclusivity for a while as the space shuttle retires?
Well, the space shuttle is supposed to retire at the end of next year.
Okay.
So then we'd follow cargo missions immediately thereafter. Although if the space shuttle ends up running a little longer, then there may be some overlap.
Are you going to hit those milestones?
I think that we have a decent chance of doing it. It's not entirely.
I mean, there's going to be guys. You have guys waiting up there for simple.
Well, NASA isn't. I don't think NASA's counting on us being there exactly on time. They do have some contingencies, and we're certainly going to do our best to meet those timelines. I think we can. We don't have. It's not fully within our power because, there's NASA as well. We've got to meet all the NASA safety requirements, and if they levy requirements on us that we don't yet understand or appreciate, or they're new requirements, then that could push out the effective date of the first operational mission. But I don't think it's going to be much beyond the end of next year. So
I'm curious. I've always wondered about this about you. Space exploration, rockets are the stuff of governments, large countries.
Yeah.
Did you have an epiphany one day where you just said, to hell with it, I'm going to actually do this myself? I'm going to create a commercial space company?
Yeah.
I mean, who
sort
comes
of.
up with that idea? You in the shower?
It is
driving to the office?
out of left field, yeah. You mentioned the areas of interest that I had in college. One of them was space travel. In particular, the extension of life beyond Earth, to like making life multiplanetary. I actually, when I was in college, I didn't think I would actually be a part of space.
I was going to say you're the only guy who thought of this stuff that actually did it. I mean, there are millions of people that think, "Oh, I'm going to do this. I'm going to, be an astronaut when I grow up." Not many people actually build rockets when they're 35 years old.
Right, and actually, when I was in college, it wasn't these are the three areas I want to be involved in. It's these are the three areas that I think will most affect the future of humanity. And I didn't. If you'd asked me in college, do you think I'd be involved in space? The answer would have been almost certainly not. I thought it would be highly unlikely because you need billions of dollars. You need to be a government, and actually, there's only like a handful of governments that can even do that. Right. So it wasn't with the expectation that I didn't expect to be involved in space. But as a result of PayPal, the capital I got from that, I could do something in space. And it actually the space stuff. It actually came from a conversation that Deo and I. Where's Deo? Yeah, there he is. So we were coming back from Deo's parents' place in Long Island, and Deo asked me, like, what am I going to do after PayPal? And I said, well, I thought maybe there'd be something philanthropic that could be done in space that would get the public more excited about space travel, and in particular, sending people to Mars. And I said, but I'm sure NASA's got that covered, and so I'll go look on the NASA website for when are we going to Mars, because of course it should be on the website. Like, we're going to Mars in this year, and this is how we're going to do it. But there was nothing at all about people going to Mars. I was like, I just don't understand why there's nothing about people going to Mars. Because if you look at the literature in the 70s, it was all about, well, we went to the moon, now we're going to go to Mars. Right. And so what happened? And there was the space shuttle, and the space shuttle turned out to be a really big mistake. And it could barely get to low Earth orbit. Forget about the moon or Mars or anything like that. And so I thought, well, geez, maybe I can do something that's going to get the public excited about Mars, and that will generate congressional support, which will turn into funding for NASA to go do this. Looked at a few different options. Actually, Deo and I did a couple of trips to Russia to look at buying some refurbished Russian ICBMs. Right. That's
just change the telemetry a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. Make sure you shift the payload. Like, which button do we press?
And meanwhile, NASA lost the blueprints for the Saturn V rocket, right? So you couldn't rebuild that.
Right. Saturn V was a great rocket. It's just too bad that we should just rebuild that rocket and make it better. Like, just improve on that rocket. It was a good design. It's so much better than the space shuttle.
So are you going to put a man on Mars?
Comparable.
Are you going to put a man on Mars? You and I have a bet. I haven't forgotten the bet.
Right.
We were in a plane flying over the North Pole under the Aurora Borealis,
Right.
as a matter of fact, and we made a bet. You believe that you would put a man on the moon by 20.
Not on the moon.
Oh, I'm sorry, on Mars.
Yeah.
By
2020 maybe?
I think it was 2020 or 2025.
Okay.
You gonna make it?
We'll try.
What's the next milestone for SpaceX?
Well, there's the next big milestone will be launching Falcon 9, our big rocket, which hopefully will occur towards the end of, around the end of summer. That's the rocket that'll be used to carry our Dragon spacecraft to orbit, and Dragon spacecraft is what will service the space station. So Falcon 9 is a pretty good sized rocket. It's actually the most powerful single core rocket in the US fleet, more powerful than what Boeing and Lockheed make.
How much does it
before considering side boosters?
How much each one of these cost?
On a per flight of Falcon 9,
Right.
about $40 million.
Those are big bets.
Yeah, and then if you add a Dragon spacecraft on top of that, is about the same. And then there's various NASA overhead.
So you're making a
things.
$100 million bet when you
Yeah,
light
right.
the fuse on that thing.
Yeah, that's a deal in the rocket world, by the way. For only $100 million, we will carry some cargo to orbit. So launching Falcon 9 will be the next big one. There's a sort of smaller milestone, which is an upcoming Falcon 1 flight, maybe as soon as the end of this month. That'll deliver our first operational satellite to orbit, which is the Malaysian satellite. It's intended to do Earth observation, for like natural disasters and stuff like that. And and then let's see. Then at the end of this year, hopefully we'll launch our first Dragon spacecraft from Falcon 9. It won't go to the space station. We'll do sort of basic orbital maneuvering and re-entry, and then next year we go to the space station for the first time.
Okay. How long is the contract for the space station?
How long? How large?
Yeah. How long?
How long? It runs through approximately 2015.
Okay.
And although I think it'll be extended beyond that, because
Right.
It's just that the operational plan for the space station kind of only goes to 2015. So,
Frankly, in theory, if you get this right, do we need NASA anymore?
well, absolutely. NASA, we aren't a customer to NASA.
Right.
Right. NASA is our customer, I should
Right.
say. So they're our biggest customer. And in fact, when NASA does developments, although in all circumstances prior to this, NASA has had the sort of made the design decisions. The implementation of those design decisions has been done by aerospace contractors. So the novel thing here is that for the first time, NASA isn't dictating the design. They're simply saying, we need cargo delivered. We're willing to pay.
Giving you a performance contract and letting you do the rest.
Right,
Yeah.
right. It's sort of more like FedEx,
Yeah.
or SpaceX.
We deliver.
Yeah, absolutely.
Any questions about space, guys? We have one down here. We have a Homestead High School junior asking a question.
Is this on? Okay. So for your Falcon series, you decided to use the ̂iːln engine, right?
Right. We developed the ̂iːln engine, actually.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah.
My question for you is, why did you go for the single or one type of engine and then use 9 of them on the Falcon 9? How many is
Yep.
it? Because I've seen a lot of other in the history of space. It's like everyone, like above 5, you're like, oh my God, the turbo pumps are all going to blow up or something. And then, so why did you choose that instead of developing a larger engine?
Well, I should point out, like the Saturn V, although it had 5 engines on the first stage, also had 5 engines on the second stage, and then 1 engine on the third stage. So it was actually an 11-engine rocket. Falcon 9 has got 9 engines on the first stage, 1 on the second stage. So it's actually one total of 10, so 1 less than a Saturn V. And the advantage of the 9 engines is that you can lose an engine at any point, including immediately after liftoff, and still complete your mission, which was not true of the Saturn V. The thrust weight of the Saturn V was about 1.15, so you actually had a very dangerous point immediately after liftoff, where you could potentially subside if you had an engine failure within the first few seconds. With rockets, because you're taking off vertically, it actually for the first stage, it actually the initial boost stage points you towards having more engines. because if you want true engine out capability, because you always have to have a thrust weight greater than 1, otherwise you're coming back. Whereas in aircraft, you can have a thrust weight of much less than 1 and still be okay, because you can sort of glide and reduce your climb rate and that kind of thing and still be okay. So it actually it does push you to have more than say, like, 747's got 4 engines, but the equivalent for a rocket would be some number greater than 4. And maybe it's not as high as 9, but we needed 9 to achieve the payload requirements that our customers wanted. And as long as you're very careful about ensuring that the problem with one engine cannot cascade into problems with another engine, more is actually better. Google operates with tens of thousands of computers rather than a few giant mainframes.
It also fits with the Tesla model of having 8,000 little batteries.
If you think 9 engines is bad, try 6,831 cells.
Next question.
So, Elon, with the Dragon spacecraft, is that going to also be a manned craft? And if so, are you going to be shuttling the astronauts back and forth to the space station?
Dragon is designed to meet the NASA man rating requirements. There's a few key documents there regarding structural safety margins and redundancy. It's designed to meet those requirements. There's G-loading, max G-loading, and dealing with worst case abort conditions and that kind of thing. All those things we're designed to meet. There's one key development item that we need to finish, which is the escape tower, so that we have a launch escape system. In case something goes wrong with the core booster, it can carry the capsule to safety. It's also something they had during the Apollo era, but they don't have that for the space shuttle. Really the two weak areas of the space shuttle, and the two most dangerous periods for a manned vehicle are during the ascent phase and the descent phase. There are fundamental architectural flaws with the shuttle approach. One is on the ascent phase, there is no escape system. They decided they didn't need an escape system because the shuttle would never fail. Really? We're like, wow, okay. So there's no escape system. If anything goes wrong on the ascent, it's curtains. And then on reentry, particularly the initial part of reentry, which is the high heating point, because it's not a naturally stable vehicle. You've got to have control surfaces and wings. So it has control surfaces and wings. So if anything happens with the control system, so any the electronics that don't work or malfunction, or there's a hinge that isn't working properly in one of the control surfaces, that's it, you're toast. It's not naturally stable. It has to be controlled, and then the heating rate goes with the square of the radius of whatever you're doing with. So if you've got a wing leading edge that's got a very effectively got a sharp radius, you have a very concentrated heat, which limits the material choice to some very brittle materials. In fact, it'll only work for Earth orbit reentry. If you come in at a higher velocity than low Earth orbit velocity, there's no material known to man that can withstand it. So actually, for like the moon, you couldn't use a winged vehicle. It's impossible. It's not like if you think of the Apollo era. Okay, they had airplanes back then. It's not like, oh wow, wings. What are those things? The designers of Apollo, von Braun and the others, were very familiar with aircraft. If they thought wings made sense, they would have said, let's put wings on this thing. But they don't. When it comes to space, wings are dumb. Just as you don't make an airplane look like a boat. It's different media.
So if when they retire the space shuttle, how are they going to bring the astronauts back until you're able to do that?
The Soyuz.
Okay, the Russians will do it.
Yeah. So the Soyuz is a good. I mean, I would definitely prefer to ride on the Soyuz than the space shuttle. You have an escape system on the Soyuz. Oh, and then of course on reentry, a blunt body reentry capsule, can be designed to be naturally stable, so that even if all the control systems fail, that and you're just lights out, dark. Everything's, it's naturally, it's like a shuttlecock. It's naturally stable on reentry, and you don't have to, do anything there, and you can just manually pull the chutes or something like that. So, in fact, that's happened on a couple of Soyuz flights where they've had control system failures. If that had been the shuttle, it would have been curtains. But because it's naturally stable, you don't have to worry about that. And then because you've got that blunt body reentry, the heat shield is much more robust because you've got this really big radius heat shield instead of these sharp radius wings. So it's really a much safer design. I believe there's never been a fatality on the Soyuz, which has been going much longer than the shuttle. Many more flights. So,
Elon, how do you keep these two different things separate in your mind? I mean, you're dealing with two massive industries, very distinct worlds. I mean, do you have to like literally say, oh, wait a minute, I'm doing rockets right now. No, I'm doing cars right now. And how do you segregate those two things? Because they're both competing for your attention 24 hours a day.
Right, and I have my kids actually. I spend a lot of time with my kids,
And
by the way.
4 kids.
5 kids, yeah.
5 kids. Yeah.
Right.
How do you manage that?
Yeah, that is tricky.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah. Well, actually, it's okay most of the time. But if it's when a crisis flares up in either kids or one of the businesses, then it can be quite a little bit overwhelming.
So it's like triage all the time.
It is kind of like triage. I mean, the rocket business and the car business are pretty hard in the best of times, and these are not the best of times.
Next question.
You don't like wings.
I don't like wings for things that go to space where there is no air.
I mean, my understanding of the reason the wings were on the space shuttle was so that they could land where they wanted to.
Oh, okay. So let me correct a misconception then. A blunt body, sort of a capsule, gumdrop style thing, is a controlled landing. In fact, because you still have a lift vector, so you use offset center of mass to create a sort of a tilt in the capsule, and that actually creates a lift vector. And that lift vector would typically be a lift of a drag of 0.2 to 0.3, but that's plenty enough to steer you where you want to go. And in fact, even in Apollo, when they didn't have GPS and they were really dealing with very primitive electronics, their landing accuracy was a 1 mile radius. And of course, if you can get much better than that with GPS and all that other stuff. In fact, the only error is the wind drift. That's really the only meaningful error. And if you do a steerable chutes, or put some like a little propeller that popped out or something like that, you could drop the capsule on the numbers on the runway. Just like a parachutist can steer their flight down to a very accurate location. And then you could, I think you just sort of like flare it just before you get to the bottom, just like a parachutist, and there you are.
Next question in the back.
I was there several years ago in the Mojave Desert when Spaceflight 1 took off for the maiden voyage. I was wondering, first of all, what was SpaceX's involvement in that program? And do you guys have any plans for taking up civilians into space?
We didn't have any involvement with the Burt Rutan's Spaceship One, except that I'm a trustee of the X Prize Foundation, and I provided a little bit of the funding to the Ansari X Prize that they won, and I was there for one of the flights. And it's actually it's great that it was won. But it is worth pointing out that there's a significant difference between a suborbital flight and an orbital flight, because space kind of seems like, well, space is all the same thing. But if you look at the energy required to get to space versus the energy required to get to orbit, they're very different orders of magnitude. You need an ideal velocity of roughly Mach 25 to get to orbit, Mach 3 to get to space, if you define space as, say, 50 miles up. And that's a pretty big differential, but it's bigger than that because the kinetic energy goes with the square of the velocity. So you need 625 units of energy to get to orbit, 9 units of energy to get to space. So you're about 1.5% of the energy, one versus the other. So the requirements are really way, way different. So you need, in fact, it's only just barely possible to escape Earth's gravity well, just barely. If you look at the size of Saturn V, for example, that ultimately took 2 people to the surface of the moon, one plus one who was orbiting the moon. That was a really gigantic vehicle. I mean, it's like the size of an office building, and it got 2 people to the surface of the moon.
Next question.
Why do you think multiplanetary existence is important?
Excellent question. So you have to say, well, how do you decide that anything is important? So there's, I think the lens of history is a helpful way to distinguish more from less important things. And the further out you zoom, the more you can distinguish the less important from the more important. And if you take a look at the whole 4 billion year history of Earth and the evolution of life itself, and say, well, what are the really big milestones in the evolution of life itself? And you can point to, obviously, single-celled life and multicellular life, differentiation into plants and animals, movement of life from the oceans to land, the mammals, consciousness. Sort of those are the biggies. And those stand above I think the parochial things, concerns of humanity. But I think on that scale would also fit life becoming multiplanetary. I think it would be at least comparable to life going from the oceans to land, arguably more so, because at least oceans to land could be a gradual affair. If it got uncomfortable, you hop back in the ocean. It's a lot harder to go over, to travel 1 billion miles over, irradiated space, and then land in a hostile environment and create a self-sustaining and growing, life, ecology. That's really, really hard. And in fact, this is the first time in the 4 billion year history of life itself that it is even within the realm of possibility. So I think, therefore, if something is important enough to figure on the scale of the evolution of life itself, it should be at least considered, say, worth about as much money as we spend on lipstick. Maybe not as much money as we spend on healthcare, but that's a lot. But enough on, maybe north of cosmetics or something. I think we should spend a little bit of our resources doing that, and that's just a wise bet for life as we know it. So it just seems like that should make it important enough for a little bit of money, like maybe 0.5% of our GDP or something like that, and that'll be enough to do it.
Anything you want to say on Solar City?
Solar City is doing great. Thank goodness. It is.
Tell the audience what it is.
Sure. Solar City is the country's largest provider of solar power systems to homes and small businesses. So outside of the utility scale solar activity, and it was co-founded and run by Peter and Lyndon Rive, who are my cousins, in interest of full disclosure. So I serve as the chairman there, and I provide some advice strategically and on the product side. And but thankfully, it requires almost none of my effort, and those guys are just awesome in terms of their execution of Solar City, having grown it to a leadership position in the course of 3 years. So if anyone's thinking of getting solar, call like 1-800-SOLAR CITY, something like that, or 888, I'm not sure.
Any questions? Next question.
So, so how does that work? I mean, you've convinced the NASA to give you like a huge contract. How can I imagine that? What story is behind that? Can you tell us, or can you share us that story a little bit? That's the one question that I have. And the other is, you've been working on solar, you've been working on clean tech, or on cars, you've been working on
space. So you're transforming society in all those projects, and then there's PayPal. So how does that fit? That's the two questions.
Well, definitely PayPal. I mean, I was completely out of PayPal. Well, almost completely out of PayPal when I started SpaceX, and then from a business standpoint, my time is really split between SpaceX and Tesla. Almost no time. I spend almost no time on Solar City because it's just running so well by itself, and the guys there are just doing a great job. And there's really not much I can add to what they're doing. But going to the NASA question, it took us a long time and a lot of effort to convince NASA to rely on us. And when we won that cargo resupply services contract, it's basically value ranging from $1.6 to $3.1 billion. We competed against Boeing, Lockheed, and Align Tech Systems. Or actually, they were all three of them together against us. There's a sort of a partnership called Planet Space, which is basically it was Boeing, Lockheed, and Align Tech Systems against SpaceX, and we won. So, or at least NASA felt confident enough to give us that deal. So, preceding that, it had been sort of 6 years of working to gain their confidence. And we'd won a preceding contract, which was called the COTS contract, Commercial Orbital Transportation Services, to demonstrate progress in that direction. But I have to give NASA a lot of credit here, because without that COTS contract, it would have been very difficult for us to compete for the Cargo Resupply Services contract. They've been helpful in an advisory capacity and a financial capacity. So I think we're very grateful to NASA and appreciative of everything that they've done, because we wouldn't be in a position to have won that cargo resupply contract without their help. So.
During that microsecond each day that you actually have to contemplate other activities, what are you dreaming of now?
I really, my mind is full. Just dealing with SpaceX and Tesla and then family matters. There are a few areas. I think at some point in the future, if you're interested, take a look at fusion. That's a tough problem, and it's something that I think we could solve. But it would, I'd say me. I think humanity could solve that problem, but it is a very tough one. And maybe there's something where I could be helpful there. But that's just completely speculative. It could be totally wrong. Success may not be one of the possible outcomes.
Hey, if you can get me to sit on 3,000 laptop batteries, you can get me to sit on a fusion reactor.
Yeah. Well, fusion. I think some scale is needed for fusion, probably. Although there's some ideas for having smaller scale fusion. I'm not talking about cold fusion, but sort of kind of fusion at sort of a nanoscale, if you will, like basically very small amounts of fusion in a little container. But it is a very hard problem. And then I have an idea for create double-deckering highways, which I think I thought a lot about when I'm driving to work in LA. The highways, it would just be, I think if you create prefabricated sections of highway and did a very efficient kind of a metallic structure that could withstand the worst earthquakes, and the trick would be making it light and very strong and inexpensive. But I think I know how to do that. And it's that sort of relatively mundane, but it would have a big effect on people's lives. And then I have this sort of idea for an electric plane, which I think could be pretty cool. Electric supersonic plane. So.
That's a lot of batteries.
It is a lot. That's a lot of batteries. It is. It is a lot of batteries.
Next question. By the way, I haven't heard any of this stuff before. This may be in print tomorrow. Yes.
So nobody says that's what I'm doing. You asked me what in the nanosecond or split second of like, I'm like, okay. I've been thinking a lot about the plane one, more than I should. Actually, I try to ban that from my mind. I'll talk to you about it. So I got to stop myself from thinking about that one because that's a very exciting one.
I don't think you covered the X Prize, the status of the X Prize, and two-part question: what do you think about a bigger X Prize for battery technology in the U.S.?
Sorry, a bigger X Prize for what?
For battery.
Battery. Yeah, I think an X Prize for battery technology would be great if there's a sponsor like the federal government or anyone. I think it's great to incent outcomes rather than it's great to make bets on approaches, but it's also good to incent outcomes. And ultimately, you care about the outcome, not the approach. And that's the good thing about prizes is they don't try to rely on some panel of experts to figure out what the approach is that's going to work, because often those panels of experts are not the people who are going to figure out the innovations that result in the outcome you want. And that's basically why you have prizes. And as far as the X Prize is concerned, there's an automotive X Prize, there's a genomics X Prize for low-cost sequencing of genes. There's the Google Lunar X Prize, which SpaceX is trying to help with a little bit by offering. The only discounted launches we offer are for the Google Lunar X Prize, actually. Yeah, so there's a bunch of stuff happening there, and I think it's a good model. It should be emulated more. DARPA did a great example of a prize thing with the DARPA Grand Challenge. That was there's the DARPA Grand Challenge, DARPA Urban Challenge for autonomous vehicles. That's got to be one of the highest bang for buck items that DARPA has ever done. Because I guarantee if you made that like a DoD contractor and had Lockheed and Raytheon and all the usual suspects bid on it, it would have been like $2 billion, and they'd still be working on it. So anyway, I think there's a lot of room for prizes, and there should be more of them.
One more question, then I have one.
Given the range of technologies and areas you've touched, I'm curious what your take on robotics is. It almost seems
on
like
robotics?
On robotics, exactly. It seems close enough to what you've done, but I haven't heard you talk about it.
Well, Tesla does use robotics to a limited extent in its production today, particularly on the battery pack side, because you've got so many cells, almost 7,000 cells, that some robotic assistance is important in making the battery pack. And we'll certainly see a lot more of that as Tesla scales up. So robotics it's great for mass manufacturing. For space exploration, obviously we've seen great dividends played by robotics as well with the Mars exploration rovers. And there's a really big rover going called Mars Science Laboratory, and that was supposed to launch soon, but it's going to be a couple years before that goes. That's about the size of like a Volkswagen. So I think there's a lot of room for robotics in a lot of fields, and that'll increase and continue in both automotive and space and other areas. But at the end of the day, I think we still need to make life multiplanetary. It can't just be sort of sending droids out there. I'm pro-life in that sense. So I think robotic exploration, robotic preparation, but we also need life going beyond Earth as well. So.
I was just curious from a perspective of making people's lives better. One big thing
Yeah.
awareness is around that. I was just curious if that was an area that you even thought about or going through in the nanosecond.
No, I haven't really thought about robotics personally, but just not to say that I don't think there are lots of things that could be automated and where there could be robots that help people in their daily lives. I'm sure there'll be a continued expansion of the whole iRobot type thing beyond vacuum cleaning. Yeah, yeah. I think it's a great area. So,
I have one last question for you. I've followed your career for a long time, known you for a long time.
Yeah.
You know, for many years, you were very successful, but largely anonymous.
Yeah, you know,
you were a cult figure for a long time.
Right. I was underground.
I mean, I've never seen you walk the street. You could walk the streets of Oxford, and nobody knew who you were. I saw you.
I think I can still do that, by the way. I don't know.
But less and less. In the last couple of years, you've become increasingly a public figure, a celebrity, and your name starts popping up now in gossip pages and websites and that sort of thing. How are you dealing with that?
I don't love it.
You love it. Is it interfering with your ability to do what you do? I
think I don't like it when people think wrong things. I mean, I'm like far from flawless, so I'm like, but I don't like when people think wrong things about me. And I guess I must say I don't really like the sort of celebrity element. I don't like when people sort of try to write things that are sort of trivialities that don't actually, it's like, why write about that? You know, obviously people find that kind of interesting, or some people do, hopefully not many. I don't know, sometimes people say like wrong things that I get, you know, concerned that, well, what if my kids read that, you know, because they're 5 and they're starting to read. And that's probably the most concerning thing. I'm not too worried about it from a business standpoint, because most people that I interact with, particularly if they've known me for a while, they know what's true and what's not true, and in a lot of cases they don't care anyway. Even if it was true, they don't care. But it does concern me if my kids were to read something that was just not true.
I mean, you understand, as Tesla continues to be successful, and as SpaceX begins to assume the role of the space shuttle, you begin to become something like Henry Ford and Wernher von Braun combined. And that's a level of celebrity few people ever know. And are you ready for that?
I'm probably not ready for that. I'm not a naturally extroverted person. In fact, I used to be horrendous at public. I mean, I'm not that great as it is, but I used to be really horrendous and just sort of shake and be unable to speak. But I kind of learned not to do that. So, I mean, I'd much rather just be, you know, doing engineering and stuff and design. So that's really what I like to do. But you know, I mean, I'm happy to, and I like doing things like this, which are fine. And and you know, if you're in the car business, you got to sell cars and stuff. So I gotta go out there and be promotional. But there are other people at Tesla that actually are much better speakers and sellers of the car than I am, I think. So.
Well, that's hard to believe. Anything else you want to tell these folks out here?
He's talked about a lot. I thought there were some really good questions from the audience, actually.
Put your money down now.
Right, I mean, I don't know. Wish us luck. I don't know, something like that. I don't know. I mean, I'm not superstitious, but you never know. I mean, there could be some divine entity that's sort of. If there is, then I hope that entity is favorable.
And if worse comes to worse, you already know how to live on $1 a day.
Yeah, absolutely.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Uber entrepreneur, Elon Musk. All of you had a chance to take a look at the Tesla Roadster sitting out there in the parking lot. It was the one behind the orange cones that looked very different from all the rest of the cars out there. If you didn't get a chance, try to beat Elon out of here tonight and go take a look at it, or at least watch him tear out of the parking lot silently. So, allow me to do an introduction, sir. We've known each other a long time.
We have. You know, Churchill Club is 12 letters.
Oh, yes, it is. Oh, my goodness. I was just thinking, it was 20, it's hard to believe it was 28 years ago that Rich Karlgaard and Tony Perkins showed me a plan for this. And it was about this, just a few years before I was shown the plan for eBay. And in both cases, I said, I just don't think it's going to work.
It's crazy.
No, it's just crazy. So let me introduce you. 37-year-old Elon Musk was born and raised in South Africa, but left home at age 17 to make his way in the world. Living on as little as $1 per day, he eventually made his way to the Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania, where he earned bachelor's degrees in economics and physics. Musk then attended Stanford's graduate program in high-energy physics, where he lasted exactly 2 days before dropping out to form a company with his brother. That company, Zip2, was sold for $300 million. Musk then founded ʻiːlʒn, an online financial services company. It eventually became PayPal, of which Elon was the largest shareholder. PayPal, as we all know, was purchased by eBay for $1.5 billion in 2002. When he graduated from Wharton, Elon determined the 3 important areas where he wanted to make a contribution was the internet, clean energy, and space. And with PayPal, Tesla Motors, SpaceX, and Solar City, he has done just that. And in the process, made himself one of the most celebrated entrepreneurs on the planet. Ladies and gentlemen, Elon Musk.
Thanks.
So let's begin with the topic of greatest interest to the audience here tonight, I assume. Tesla Motors.
Okay.
Where's the company at right now? Where do orders stand?
Oh my God, I don't know what to tell you. It's been rough. No, I'm just kidding. It's actually it's been pretty good. In fact, it really quite a contrast to the rest of the auto business. We're sold out, first of all, for the Tesla Roadster, the sports car. We're sold out through the end of October. And within, I think probably within 2 or 3 months, we'll be actually sold out of all 2009 production for the Roadster. So
is this for the standard Roadster or the advanced version?
Well, we do have a Roadster Sport coming out, which is for those for whom the Roadster isn't fast enough.
Right.
There's the Roadster Sport.
Yeah, how fast is that one now?
That'll do 0 to 60 in 3.7 seconds.
So it's
faster than almost any.
It's like
car,
an ICBM
really.
laid over on its side.
Yeah, it's it's ridiculously fast.
Now, how are the orders for that?
Good, actually. I haven't looked at the latest orders for the Roadster Sport, and people actually have an opportunity to upgrade their car to the Roadster Sport that are getting their car after, I think, late June or July. And what we're finding is a lot of people are choosing to upgrade their car to the Sport package. So I actually don't have an exact number for you, but anecdotally, it seems to be doing very well.
Now, the Roadster is 109,000. Is that right?
Yeah.
And the Roadster Sport's 139,000. Do I have that right?
Well, the price to customers is actually, in terms of a comparison price that's relevant for comparing it to a Porsche or something like that, is actually about $98,000. And the reason for that is, if you buy an electric car, you get a $7,500 federal tax rebate. Even if you're an AMT, it applies to everyone.
Okay.
And then you don't pay the gas guzzler tax, which is somewhere in the order of $3,000. So effectively, you're
$12,000 discount.
Yeah, you're roughly, and it depends on which car you compare it against, because the gas guzzler tax does vary, but it's somewhere between a $9,000 to $12,000 discount, and relative to a gasoline sports car. So in effect, you're talking about a car that's just under $100,000 as a base price, and then the sport package is another $20,000 on top of that, and that's equivalent to like going from like a 911 to a 911 Turbo or something, that kind of thing.
Now, if I were to order one right now, if anybody in the audience wants to order one right now, raise your hands. I will take orders. I mean, there you go. If somebody out here were to order one right now, what would it take? What's the deposit and what's the delivery date?
So we're actually reducing our deposit requirements on the Roadster. Previously, we'd used the deposits to provide funding for the company, and that was an acknowledged thing. We said, look, car companies are very capital intensive, so in order to make this doable or more doable, we're going to take deposits. They'll be at risk. People should recognize that, and then the advantage is that they get one of the first cars. And we actually got a lot of people who signed up to that. But we don't really need that anymore. So we're actually going to reduce the deposit down to I think $9,900, and then you pay the balance just at start of production, which is a couple months prior to delivery.
Now, did you find any impact on the orders with the falling gas prices? I mean, we saw what happened with Prius. I mean, you can go to Sunnyvale and entire supermarket parking lots are filled with unsold Priuses. Did that affect you guys at all?
I don't think that was a huge impact because most people aren't buying the $100,000 sports car because of to save money on gas.
It's more geek love than it is cheap gas.
Yeah, I was more worried about how that would affect sales for our sedan, which we just unveiled a few weeks ago.
Yeah, we'll talk about that in a moment. But keep going, yeah.
But I don't think that's been a key impact on Roadster sales. I think certainly the economy as a whole and the implosion of people's net worths has had an effect on new Roadster sales. And we're fortunate that we do have a significant backlog, going out 6 months. But I wouldn't say gas prices have had a big effect on the Roadster.
Now, being in the car business, you have to be asked, are you taking any federal money? And are you worried about your job security if you are?
Well, I don't have to worry about my compensation. My compensation currently is $1, so I'd be happy to cut that in half for the federal government if they do give us a loan. But actually, we've taken no government money at all thus far. Some people out there think we have, and we haven't. Now, we do aspire to get a government loan under what's called the ATVM program. It's the Advanced Technology Vehicle Manufacturing Program.
That's from the DOE? That's
from the DOE. It's not bailout money, and this program was done before there was a need for bailout money. This legislation was written started writing it about 18 months ago, and it finally got approved by Congress last year sometime, I think late last year. So, and this is before Obama. So this isn't stimulus money. This isn't bailout money. This is actually something that originated in the Senate Energy Committee because they felt it was a matter of national security and environmental, obviously environmentally important for the United States to accelerate its transition away from oil for all the obvious reasons that it's damaging to it's obviously very damaging to the environment and as gas prices rise, because as they will dramatically when we come back to another boom, there's going to be a massive wealth transfer out of the United States to other countries, and it's just kind of silly, for that. Why it's cheaper for us to just accelerate the move of oil.
Now, I'm not going to ask you how much you plan to get from the government or when, because I think you said that publicly once and got in trouble, didn't you?
I did get in trouble. I just said what they told me, and they didn't say keep it quiet. So, but suffice to say, we are highly optimistic that we will receive approval, loan approval, in the near term.
Okay, we'll leave it there. Let's talk about the factory. That was there was an awful lot of news a few months ago. Groundbreaking ceremonies. Yeah. Big assembly plant going to be out there on 237 in San Jose. Yeah. Now it seems to be on hold. And something about financing delayed, or you didn't qualify for it, or what happened?
Yeah. So the San Jose. The idea of using the undeveloped land off the 237 in San Jose occurred before the Section 136 or the ATVM loan program was approved by Congress. And one of the clauses in that ATVM loan program is that you have to, it gives preference to manufacturing facilities older than 20 years, which was actually, so it's sort of a quasi-Buy American clause, because the foreign car companies that have factories here, almost all their factories are younger than 20 years. So it's essentially to bias the cash towards American companies that clause is put in. But nonetheless, it's there, which means we can't do greenfield. Well,
I assume there's going to be a lot of empty buildings in Dearborn soon. Is that where you plan on going?
No, we'll most likely be in Southern California. We actually have term sheets on 2 locations in Southern California. We looked first in the Bay Area. I'd love to take over NUMMI. That would be awesome. Yeah. I don't know if there's, maybe at some point we'll have an opportunity to acquire NUMMI. That'd be great. I'll take that in a second. But that isn't available right now, and I don't think we can't afford it really, unless they give it to us. Which maybe they will. I don't know.
Now, so where are the cars being manufactured right now? UK, at Lotus?
Actually, the Roadster is it's considered a U.S. manufactured car. The final assembly occurs in the Bay Area in